some of the names of. Okay, the recording has started. I just want to thank everybody for coming, and there are some housekeeping rules that I want to share with you all. First of all, please keep yourselves on mute. Secondly, please make ample use of the chat function of Zoom. That's the really cool thing about Zoom. You can put all your thoughts and comments on chat. We have a number of individuals who will be reading the chat throughout the evening. We will also welcome all your questions, and your questions should also be written in the chat. We will make sure not to have duplicate questions. So we have folks who will be reading them and making sure that they are asked of our panelists this evening. Students, please, if all the students, I would definitely want you all to use your video. So we would like to see you. We would like to see engagement. This is really your forum. We are bringing topics in the next couple of months that deal directly with the relationship between the community and our police officers and how to make that relationship better, what can be improved, what's going well. And I want to thank Mr. Franklin this evening because he will be our moderator, and he will start us off. And we'll have a really, hopefully, lively, robust discussion with Sergeant Banks and Chief Adderley. And after that robust discussion, basically talking about gun violence in our community and how it relates to the relationships that we have with our police officers and what can be done to improve that relationship. And, you know, and some lessons learned based on media, that coverage that has occurred in regards to gun violence and so forth. So after that robust, hopefully very lively discussion and also informative discussion, we will open it up for questions. And you may address, again, you may address your question via chat, but if you feel that you want to state your question aloud to the live, just put that there, and either Sulon Johnson or Tomas Evangelista will definitely say student XYZ would like to say their question aloud, and then you'd have your chance to do that. Okay, and if you have any questions, again, use the chat. Someone's monitoring it, and we'll answer any questions that you have, even about the process. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Patrick Franklin, the president and executive director of the Urban League of Palm Beach County. And he'll be monitoring this forum and introducing our panel. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Marie. Thank you for the introduction. And I want to thank all of you who have worked hard to put this program together. My name is Patrick Franklin, president and CEO of the Urban League of Palm Beach County. And tonight we're going to spend a little time talking about community police relations. And we have two absolutely experts in the area to join us tonight to lead the discussion and give really good input on how they practice this type of community police relations and how they practice policing in our area, especially in the city of West Palm Beach. I have with me tonight Jeremy Banks, Sergeant Jeremy Banks, a native of Palm Beach County from Pahokee. And it's always good to have someone who was born and raised here stay here. So Sergeant Banks, thank you for being here. He's a graduate of Pahokee High School, got his Bachelor's of Arts degree in criminology from Auburn University, and graduated from the Police Academy at Palm Beach State College in 2004, and rose to the rank of sergeant in November 2016. Now, he has a lot of other things that's going on that he's been involved with, but the most important thing is that he's been married for 16 years to Sharice, and they have 4 children. And I want to congratulate him for being the man that he is right now, to be in this community and serving this community. So, Sergeant Banks, thank you for joining us tonight. Our next panelist and lead discussionaire is our own Chief Frank Adderley. Frank is the Chief of Police for the city of West Palm Beach, and he has an extensive background, an expensive area of work that he's done over his body of work for many years. He's a native of Fort Lauderdale, graduated from Stranahan High School in 1979, He joined the Fort Lauderdale Police Department of October of 1980. So he went straight out of high school, almost right into being a police officer. And he has spent all those years preparing himself to be where he is today as the chief of police for the city of West Palm Beach. He was appointed chief of police on June 4th, 2019 by Mayor Keith James here in West Palm Beach. Frank is a graduate of Florida Gulf Coast University with a degree in criminology, a master's degree in public administration from Florida International, and a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and so on and so on. So Frank has credentials to be exactly what he is, the chief of police here in the city of West Palm Beach. So, gentlemen, thank you. And I'm going to turn it back to you all. And Sergeant Banks, go first. Give a little open remark, if you would.
Hey, Patrick,
Yes, right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
For some reason, I don't know what's going on here, but who's ever monitoring this, it keeps disconnecting me.
You're getting disconnected. I hear you back and forth a little bit, Frank. Can you hear me better now?
I hear you now, but I keep getting disconnected.
You want to try it again? Why would you log off and log back on?
Monitor stop, please. Can you tell whoever's doing this to stop it, please?
Frank, if you can hear me, why don't you log off and log back on?
Well, I'm here now. I don't know who's. I mean, I'm not doing anything on my end. They just keep doing it.
Okay, well,
I'm
so
doing I'm admitting everyone, so I'm not sure what's happening here. Okay, so can you turn your, Frank, can you turn your camera on? Okay, we can't see your picture.
he's not fluid right now, Salon.
Oh, God.
No, what?
Frank, if you could log off and log back on, let's see if that has a better connection.
Right now, you can't see me, right? Is that what you're saying?
I couldn't hear you.
Right now, can you hear or see me?
We cannot see you. We can barely hear you.
Okay.
Sergeant Banks, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. If we could just have an open statement from you, and we would try to get Frank on board with us.
Okay. Well, as you know, my name is Jeremy Banks, Sergeant West Palm Beach Police Department. I'm currently assigned to our Criminal Investigation Division. I am the supervisor of our Violent Crime Unit, which consists of 8 sworn officers, detectives. Our daily responsibilities, our area of investigation includes attempted murders, aggravated batteries, normally with firearms or any other weapons of that nature, robberies, unattended deaths. What I mean by unattended deaths are deaths that occur maybe from overdose, suicide due to, once again, the topic, gun violence, overdoses, you name it. Anything that a doctor, any death that a person is not under the care of a physician or the hospital, normally my unit will respond to investigate further. I have been in this position now for the past 2 years, and it's very demanding. We're on call 24/7. So if working 10-hour shift, if something was to happen a little later, I would be responding out.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sergeant.
Frank,
I still have a little technical difficulty with Chief Adley's connection here for some reason. We're going to continue on with our discussion, and Sergeant Banks, if you can stay in tune with me, when we talk about
can you see me?
policing, and we're going to really have this discussion that, like Marie mentioned earlier, we have a lot of kids.
Hold on one second. Let me stop him.
On the call tonight.
Patrick,
And
excuse me, Chief Adderley, can you, is on. We can hear you and we can see you. Just unmute yourself.
Okay, you can hear and see me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, good. So Frank, Sergeant Banks gave an opening statement, and we'd like to see if you had an opening statement so we can continue the discussion.
Let me just thank you for the lead for this evening tonight. I think that it's us an opportunity to engage the community and have the law what the concerns are, give us an opportunity to respond to them.
Frank, we still having some difficulties with you. We can't make it out with what you're saying. I don't know if you need to try to get a different connection or a different computer. Something's going on there. All right, Sergeant Banks, let's go back to you. When we look at community policing, I'm gonna lead off with the first question. Do we police different communities from a gated community to a urban community, like let's say around the Tamron area, Avenue area? Does policing, does the reaction for police to a violent crime, anything like that, is that handled in a different format?
I'm sorry, can we mute Chief Adderley? I barely can hear your question.
You hear me now?
No.
Can you tell who's ever doing this for me to please stop?
Okay, Sergeant Banks, let's try this again because we have to keep going. When policing in an urban community, how different is it from what you're seeing in your experiences from an urban community policing from, I'm saying, a Tamron area, a Tamron corridor area, as compared to a gated community? Talk to us a little bit how the community policing may be different in those areas.
Well, it's extremely different. Keep in mind, gated communities, they have certain bylaws that we have to abide by as well, as far as traffic enforcement, parking citations. We actually have to get permission or be solicited from the homeowners association to enforce any type of activities within a gated community. Now, unless we're responding to a call for service or maybe a directed patrol. What I mean by directed patrol, the officer who is assigned to that particular area where the gated community is, he or she take it upon themselves to patrol the area for any type of crime, any type of criminal activity that's been brought to our attention. And normally, most officers assigned to those particular areas where we have gated communities really do not go in and patrol the gated community unless there is some type of issue that has been brought to the attention of law enforcement, mainly auto burglaries, residential burglaries, things of that nature.
Okay.
Now, patrolling the Tamron corridor is totally different. And we can all be honest here, there's a level of crime that's associated around the Tamron corridor. And I'm not just saying specifically to Tamron corridor, the drug activity and the gun violence, as well as career offenders that pretty much take advantage of innocent everyday residents of that area. So it is a lot different. Some may say we over police areas of the Tamron corridor, but based on our stats and numbers and things and the information that we receive daily in briefing, there is some, there is a lot of reasons why we're out there doing what we're doing and taking enforcement in a manner that we are taking enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Let's stick to the Tamron corridor. What different ways, how do you enhance community relations in that Tamron corridor? Talk to us about some of the tactics that the police force uses to engage the community in those areas that have those high crime rates?
We get out, we speak to the community, we engage the pastors of the community, pastors and anyone in the ministry, the church members. They are really helpful when it comes to the community. Because if you just ride through the Tamarind Quarter, and let's start from 2nd Street going north to 25th, I mean, we can throw a rock and hit a church in every direction almost. So I would say you start there. Pastor Field Part, he has been great. Speaking with him over the last couple of months, as well as starting young, interacting with the kids and their parents, as well as even the day-to-day knuckleheads, so to speak. If you continue to talk with an individual, and I want to go back to policing in Pahokee when I was young, it's totally different. Every cop knew pretty much everyone. It was a small town, let's call it Mayberry, for that matter.
My computer shows me here.
Back somewhere.
Yes. We have on the call tonight Reverend Kevin Jones here, also from the city of West Palm Beach. And Kevin, you have done a great job on community peace walks over the last couple of years. Give us some insight as far as the interaction between community policing and what your role is from a city employee and also a resident of that area per se.
Yeah, well, yeah, Patrick, thank you all for having me tonight. I'm glad to be a part. But yeah, I mean, we believe it's extremely important to build, relationships between law enforcement and the community and the faith community. So as you mentioned, a few years back,
Okay, I'm on here on my laptop.
I said one summer, I think it was 2015 or 2016, we partnered up and started to do peace walks, just to let the community know that we see them. I think a lot of times, we hear about these shootings on TV or
Kevin, you're accidentally muted yourself.
I thought I did. Sorry, I'm talking up a storm here. Sorry about that. Patrick. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so as far as being at Tabernacle, we feel like it's very important to engage the community and law enforcement. And historically, as you mentioned, we've been fortunate to lead a lot of peace walks and have the police join us because we felt like it was important for the community to see the police in a different way instead of them coming out only when something negative happens, to also come out during these peace walks and engage the community.
Right now, I'm looking
they
at
were
you.
always supportive of
There's still
doing.
me on there.
And
And
something else we've done in the past too is have dialogues between law enforcement and particularly our young Black men in the north end of the city, which is also helpful as well, just for them to know, to see the human side of each other, that they're people, that they're human. Some of the officers have past experiences that may relate to some of those young men. So it's very important just to continue to build those relationships, and we'll continue to try to do so.
Thank you, Kevin. Sergeant Banks, when we talk about community policing, and I'm going to stay within the confines around the Urban League, or that Tamarind, Spruce Avenue, Rosemary, Henrietta Avenue. Talk to us a little bit more about the engagement of what you're trained to do as far as engaging with the community.
Well, it's very important that we as law enforcement on all levels, from the day one Ricky officer all the way up to the chief of police, just get out and communicate. I think, is it Reverend or Pastor Jones? You said it best. I mean, we have to engage the community, show them the different side of us. when we step out of our car and I'm 6'3", 240 pounds with a tack vest and a firearm on my side, that can be quite intimidating to someone. And I'm not the best looking guy in the world, but you know, when I put on a smile every once in a while, that kind of brings someone down to ease. So it's very important to communicate, even at the PAL Center. You know, I was assigned with the Police Athletic League for 2 years back in 2008. And relationships I formed then with the young kids, I still have today, and they're adults at this point.
Very good. One of the areas that we wanted to really get involved with tonight was this issue of gun violence. And, you know, just yesterday we had another shooting in a public high school in Michigan, where now 4 students have passed away from gun violence. Sergeant Banks, talk to us. Let's start this discussion in the area of gun violence. How did we get here? How did we get here with so many guns? The United States of America has the most guns per person than any other place in the world. How did we get here?
I'm gonna have to say capitalism. If there's $1 to be made in this country, it's going to be made. Let's be honest. And guns sell. I mean, guns sell, and the fear of saying, okay, we're going to take guns away, make gun sales go up even higher. So I really don't know for as the, trying to get my words here, for as the usage of why people go to guns other than other measurements so quickly. How do they escalate to the gun violence so quickly? But I'm gonna have to say capitalism here in this country.
Okay. All right. When it comes to community relations, how would you tie prevention of gun violence in the community, in our neighborhoods? How would you tie that into right now as far as the community relations for policing?
Just educating the gun owners. You have a gun, secure your firearm, and keep in mind, these are all of our constitutional rights. And here in this country, we really believe in our constitutional rights, and we believe in owning guns. But it's more of educational value, especially with individuals with kids, and just properly securing firearms, because we do respond to a lot of calls of accidental shootings and things of that nature, which we had over the weekend, which still counts towards numbers that's affecting the overall gun violence rate within this city.
Okay. Marie Sanchez, Vice President of Programs at the Urban League. Bring on a question.
Yes, hi. Actually, I have a couple of comments that I want to direct at Sergeant Banks. First of all, I want to thank you for your service, because your opening really touched my heart. I have a lot of friends, especially girlfriends whose husbands are police officers, and I know that every time they leave, they say a little prayer that they're going to be able to come back home. And I know that as a police officer, you encounter the very low of human experience, and that could happen a couple of times during your watch. But you made a couple of comments that I wanted you to expound upon, because we do have a number of youth that are currently on this virtual forum. And you mentioned, I know you mentioned the acronym PAL, and that you're part of that. You've been a member of PAL. I just wanted you to elaborate on how those particular organizations that you have been a part of would not only just help with making sure that there is that relationship between the community and police, but also between young people and the police, because that's one of the major concerns, especially for African-American families, that when their sons especially encounter a police officer, it could be a negative result, or they could feel very negative about the experience. But there are ways, and I know that through PAL, that's one of the ways that we can have young people, especially that are on the call, can have experiences with police officers early on, so that it's not a question of, oh my gosh, here's a cop, I'm in trouble, or I'm going to end up in trouble even if I wasn't in trouble before. So give us some insight on that and how you help with the relationships that we need to build up, especially with our young people, because they're the ones that, you know, tend to really have that negative experience with police officers in the community.
Sergeant Banks, if I may, before you have an opportunity to answer that, we do one more audio check with Chief Adderley? I think we finally got his signal stable. I just want to verify that his audio is coming through. His video is perfect. I just want to make sure the audio is working. Chief Adderley, can you say something really quick, please?
Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Fantastic.
Yes.
Your signal is stable. Wonderful. Hoorah.
Okay, I hope you remembered my statement. Okay.
Okay, yes. Like I said, I had the opportunity to work within a police athletic league, and even prior to being assigned within a police athletic league, I volunteered. I volunteered my time with coaching, football, sports, and things of mainly sports within the community with PAL. We also did some volunteer work when Roosevelt full service was open, just going up there on during lunchtime and just shooting basketball and talking with the kids. It lets them see that you are human first, that you can joke, that you can be joked upon, that you can actually talk and have some type of dialogue other than law enforcement responding and giving out direct orders or orders to them to do something and they quite not understanding why. And it really do starts at home. When I say at home, I really hate walking into the grocery store in uniform and here is a 3-year-old kid and the first thing the mom or dad say, well, he's gonna get you. He's gonna take you away. And the kid just busts out in tears. That fear right then and there, as you know, we're putting the fear in law enforcement into our kids, not even knowing. I mean, it's funny to the parent, but it's not funny to me. And me personally, I drop down to one knee, I call the kid over, I give the kid a hug, I would talk to him every single time and smile and let them know that, hey, we're here to help. We're here to service you, not to take you away, not showing up at your house when it's always something bad or negative going on. But we're here to service you and to be of service.
Very good. Thank you, Sergeant Banks.
I have a follow-up question then, because especially when you said that parents will say, oh, there's the police. If you don't behave, he's gonna take you away. And it sounds like it's a reinforcement so that they would behave for their parents, you know, and not that they really believe that. But do you think education, you said it starts at home. When you said that, what kind of education do you think we might not have right now, or training that we might not have right now, or even, you know, public announcements that we might not have right now to really communicate that? Because that is perpetuated in the home. I mean, I was threatened that I would be thrown in jail if I didn't clean up my room when I was younger. And I remembered we had one police officer in our own family that took our kids, the cousins, all to jail to just basically say, this is where you'll end up if you don't behave. And that could have some negative connotation as someone's growing up. Maybe they were speeding at 16 and got their first speeding ticket. And as soon as they see the police coming, you know, adrenaline starts to flow and they might not react, you know, as they should, because they're scared because of what they've learned. How can we unlearn these stigmas or stereotypes that we have about the police? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Me personally, I don't, because me personally, I get nervous when I look up and I see the sheriff department or even my own agency behind me, because even though I may have been speeding, I'm going to say only may. I don't speed. I normally do the speed limits. But yeah, I mean, I get nervous as well, only because I had negative interactions as a youth with law enforcement. It wasn't my first interaction, but of course I was financially hit for my speeding at the time. My parents was completely upset with me based on my driving at a very young age. So even now at 43 years old, I kid you not, I really do get kind of nervous and anxiety. But at the end of the day, you know, I truly feel the service that we render, and it is getting better. And I think you made reference to education in a household. I mean, we have now 2 billion media, social media or media outlets, you may want to call it. And none of them really reflects the positive interaction with law enforcement and so forth. I think there was a cop out in Baton Rouge or somewhere in Baton Rouge, either Louisiana or Arkansas, who will always go live and show his good deeds in the community, a male white officer in the Black communities, and he's passing out gifts and things like that, and the kids just love him. I mean, whether it's chips or whenever his car pull up, they just love him. We don't see enough of that, especially in this day and age of social media, when everything can go viral instantly. And
Thank you, Sergeant Banks. Chief
Yes.
Adderley. Yes, sir. Gotcha. Let's go back to your opening statement. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Again, I mean, I just want to recognize the Urban League for hosting this event and giving us this opportunity to engage in this discussion. Obviously, violent crime is a very serious topic for discussion for us in the city of West Palm Beach. You know, we were once very high in violent crime nationwide. I think one of the numbers I heard early on was like number 9 in the nation of violent crimes. I think when you look at the number of shootings that you see here in our city, that number is definitely significant. And we got a high crime area in certain areas. But I believe we got a crime reduction strategy that's going to address that. I do believe that we need the community to recognize this as a community issue, and the fact that as stakeholders, you know, we need to all come together and have a change in our mindset. I mean, we can do as many peace walks and hand out you know, turkeys and do all of these other things, but at the end of the day, we have 135 unsolved homicides since 2015, where a young Black male shot and killed another young Black male, and crowds of 10 to 30 people stood around and watched it. And when you look at these homicides and you look at these incidents and you look at the crowds that stood around and watched these incidents, there's only one conclusion: is we have a community that says these things are okay and that we're going to accept them for what they are.
Okay. Chief, we have a student with his hands up. Rajamba, do you have a question for Chief Adderley? Go ahead. You're muted.
Hello, my name is Ujumba, and I have comments about
Please leave your message for
the
5617.
well, this is the idea that I have. I have an idea for a gun that can detect if a person is holding a lethal weapon in their hands using data processing sensors, contrary to allowing someone to shoot people who don't pose a threat since they aren't carrying weapons. Conclusively, this may prevent the number of innocent lives taken annually and allow gun owners to not be aggravated about disciplinary actions towards guns.
Okay.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that weapon.
Yeah, I'm saying that probably we could take actions to producing this weapon.
Oh, you
so
say,
that, so that it
well,
can be applied. Sorry.
at non-lethal options, they probably are what you're referring to. I mean, you have a taser that can probably, hit someone with an electrical shock and prevent that person from acting in a violent manner. And it gives, from the police perspective, an opportunity to not use lethal and be able to stabilize the situation without someone being, fatally wounded.
Good. Thank you. We have another question from Bree.
Oh yes, I had wanted to finish hearing what Sergeant Banks had to say before he was cut off. I was listening to him, but he was finishing something that he was saying, but he was cut off, and I wanted to finish hearing him say it.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. You want to hear what Sergeant Banks was saying?
Yes, I had wanted him to finish what he was saying because I was listening to like what he was talking about, but then he was cut off, and I was wondering if he remember what he was saying because I wanted him to finish it because I was interested.
Okay. Sergeant Banks, is there anything else you want to complete?
Sorry, I don't know what stage
Okay.
question.
All right, we will try to circle back to that. Chief Adderley, when since you run a department and training is a very important place of business as far as for you and your staff, what kind of training and how much training does the police department have with respect to dealing with high crime in low income areas? Can you talk to us a little bit how that community policing and the training that goes on with your officers and how that training comes about and what kind of training is it?
Well, I mean, the state mandates that we have human diversity training so that we know how to interact with the members of the public. And no matter what community you are, we need to be able to communicate effectively with the people that we provide services to. And it begins with the victims. I mean, if you can be a victim of a crime and the police show up and you can't really communicate with that person effectively, you won't really understand what exactly have transpired. So, we work towards, enhancing our level of communications and understanding different cultures so that we can interact with them and understand what their needs are and concerns and how do we assist them.
Okay. Are police officers required to take cultural competency training? And if so, what does that look like?
I mean, those are the mandates from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. We have to make sure that they complete those type of classes. And if they don't, then they're subject to losing their certifications.
Okay. With all the media coverage going on about police brutality, and as we talked before, we have young adults on the call with us tonight. How should they look at a police officer? How should they feel when they encounter a police officer in their neighborhoods?
Well, I think you need to recognize them as a person of authority at the time. And, if it's an interactions with the police and you feel that the police are mistreating you or something was said that was inappropriate, you need to realize that there's a system in place that you can file a complaint and that the police department is going to investigate those complaints. And we want to make sure that people understand that we're going to hold our officers accountable for their actions. So at the time that these things are happening, I would not recommend that you fight with the officer or resist the officer or do anything to escalate the situation. It'd be a lot easier if you be focused on understanding what the officer is directing you to do, answer the questions as you speak with them, and be focused on trying to diffuse the situation as much as you can. If you feel that after those interactions are completed and you have a legitimate complaint, I would encourage you to contact the department and actually speak to a supervisor and let them know that you want to file a complaint. And in the West Palm Beach Police Department, we're going to take it very seriously, and we're going to definitely respond to your complaint.
As we keep talking about community policing, how is community policing taught and trained to your officers?
Well, let me just say this. I just think community policing need to start at the top. And whatever you are as a leader in law enforcement, if you're not the person that's out in the street communicating with people and building strong relationships, the people that you're responsible to manage and supervise, they're not going to follow anything other than that. When they see me as the police chief in the community and I'm going to calls and I'm talking to people, you know, they realize I'm going to be engaged with the community and I'm going to take it serious. So when people have a complaint in this city, I'm asking them to call me directly. I'm going to deal with those complaints. I'm totally transparent. I believe that we need to hold our officers accountable for their action. And when people realize that you're going to have a steadfast rule and, you know, they're going to comply with that. So, I mean, you know, you can go to all of these community policing classes. We got a lot of people that go around the nation. They teach these classes. Oh, we're going to help the police learn. But, you know, if they don't have proper supervision and leadership that's saying to them that this is the way it's going to be, they're not going to conform to it. I mean, they're going to realize that this is something that's that is a serious matter, and that is something that the police department and the direction of the agency, this is what the leadership of the agency is expecting, then they're going to do it.
Very good, very good. Sergeant Banks, I want to circle back because what Bree's question was, you were talking about the officer that was doing good and how it's not shown on social media. If you want to just to finish up on that area.
Oh, yeah. And keep in mind, I'm on Facebook for pretty much all the wrong reasons. I'm on Facebook for the sheer entertainment and foolery of it. I don't post, I don't make any comments or things like that, but it is entertaining. It can really be a powerful tool, meaning all social media outlets, and it really can be detrimental to a lot of the way a lot of people think and a lot of the way a lot of people perceive actual reality and the way things are. I wished, and I started my interview for the sergeant's exam, and I can't recall the exact question, but it was like, in the future, what do you see the biggest factor with law enforcement or the biggest issue with law enforcement? And I stated social media, only because the negative outlook that we have throughout not just this country, but throughout the world. And things, like I said, go viral really, really quickly and really fast. And for the right reason, if you're a crooked, bad cop, you should be exposed. But also, I want to see some of the great cops, some of the great deeds, not just during the holiday season, but year round. And maybe that can change the perception of someone who's young, kind of in the middle of, you know, can I trust the cops? Can I not trust the cops? I know my school resource officer, the cop there, he or she is a great guy. They speak to me every day. They engage me every day, but I don't know so much about this Sergeant Banks. So.
Sergeant Banks, this is Tomas from the Urban League. I have a question. You said something earlier before we got the line stable with Chief Adderley. With respects to you getting nervous when you see someone in uniform, whether it's PBSO or City of West Palm Beach, you could just imagine what a young person may feel, or even a grown adult may feel. Having said that, the movies, social media always paints a picture, because it's sexy to do this, that whenever an officer is called to a scene or to a location, they come with a lot of aggression. Can you explain what the difference is between showing up on a scene aggressively versus what the strategy of law enforcement is with respects to de-escalating a situation before any type of communication occurs? Because I think for the young individuals, as well as the community on this call, they may have a better appreciation for when an officer shows up, when they understand what the strategy of a de-escalation is versus just showing up aggressively.
Okay, yeah, and I think Chief Adderley mentioned earlier about our training. I mean, we have training yearly, and one of our training is verbal judo. And the reason I say, okay, if a cop get behind me, you pull me over, that's fine. My license is good, everything is good, registration, not a problem. But that officer, the way he approaches the traffic stop with license, registration, proof of insurance, and you look and you're like, okay, well, seatbelt, I'm thinking I'm doing the speed limit. Okay, officer, what is the reason? Just give me what you ask. The conversation, I mean, a legitimate lawful traffic stop now have the possibility of going bad just because that particular officer haven't been properly trained, or if he have been trained, he's not reverting back to his training. And I can honestly say, and I haven't pulled anyone in a while, I'm sorry, Chief, but that's just not what I do right now. But I can issue you a citation and a warning and still get a thank you out of you just based on my training and my interaction. I have the same routine, I have the same mannerism on every single traffic stop. We as law enforcement, if someone is mouthing off to us, it's not personal directly at us. It's the situation. We all have bad days. Cops have bad days. The person who you're interacting with may be having a bad day, but at the end of the day, we are the professionals and we do have the training and we should have the, the respect of the integrity and the respect of the job to carry it out in a fashion that we have been trained.
Good.
Patrick, I have a question for Chief Adderley. In building better community police relationships, what other strategies does the police department utilize to make sure to decrease crime and to, whether it's gun violence and or other, besides for walking in the communities? What other strategies are you using?
Well, we've adopted the stratified policing concept, and one of its components is community engagement. So on a monthly basis, we have crime meetings in all of the neighborhoods here throughout the city, and we are dealing with individuals that constantly have that are part of the ongoing dialogue as to how we make our city safer, or keep our city safe. And those individuals are the ones that have been involved in this discussion for many years. So when they look at some of the concerns that they have and the issues that they see in the neighborhood, whether related to crime or whether it's code enforcement or even customer service with the police department, they're coming to the meetings and they're having these discussions with us. I think that building trust starts with, the person that really feels that, the service level was bad or they were mistreated, or, they view as a lack of service by the police department, issues that are happening in the neighborhood that's not being properly addressed. And they really believe that the person down the street is selling drugs. The police then come out and they conduct an investigation. And then we find out, well, it's not really a drug dealer. They're doing something else. Well, we're able to go back and we can have that discussion with them and let them know what our findings are. I think the open communications and being transparent and honest with the public and opening our doors is definitely the step in the right direction. I came in here 2.5 years ago. I met with a group of people and I said, we should have a citizens review board. And we need to have citizens, investigating police officers for misconduct violations. Well, the state of Florida doesn't allow that to happen. And I'm kind of disappointed that a lot of the legal minds here can't educate the public on this topic, because my Office of Internal Affairs don't have subpoena powers. They cannot go out and start issuing subpoenas and investigating officers on administrative investigations. Now, if it's a criminal investigation, I mean, that's a whole different deal. And yeah, you have subpoena power, but the state attorney does not allow law enforcement residents here in the state to conduct those type of investigation. You can't legally do it, and it can't be done. So, but let me tell you what I've done. I've opened my door. I've told those people anytime that they feel that we've investigated one of these complaints and they don't like our results, then my door is open. They can come in, they can get a copy of the case. We can all read the case together, or whatever the case may be. I tell you exactly, what the evidence is in the case, because it's an open record. It's public record. You can get a copy of it. Everyone's entitled to it, and we can answer your questions if you're not really clear as to why the police department, specifically myself, because I ultimately make those decisions in these discipline cases. So my door is open, and I think that having an open door policy and having a dialogue and making sure that people get the right information is very important. Many times when you hear people with their complaints and then you find out for them it's a third-hand person that gave it to them, half the information is inaccurate, and they did nothing to try to verify the source of information. And with bad information, it creates a bad narrative that a lot of people listen to. And now all of a sudden you got this issue where people think, everything is completely out of control. And the facts doesn't even justify or support those thoughts.
Chief, thank you for that. I just want to remind all of our students and parents online that please put your questions on the chat area, and we will gladly address them as we get to them. Chief, and Sergeant Banks, I have another question I'd like for you all to take a stab at it. What can we do as residents to highlight the work of the police officers who do their jobs effectively to counteract the negative stigma around policing?
With me, it's
Well,
simple. Oh,
go ahead, Sarge.
no, I mean, with me, it's very simple. Someone earlier said, thank you for your service. I mean, that really do mean a lot. I mean, walking into a grocery store, or a restaurant, and just saying thank you, and that means the world to me, and it really does. Chief,
right?
Well, I tell you, I believe that for me personally, and I've been doing this job for 41 years. I do it.
Bro, come get your food.
Hello.
Go ahead, somebody. Please mute if you're not speaking. Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, doing this job for 41 years now, and I do this job because I'm committed to this profession that I really love. I really love the profession of law enforcement. I support our goal. Our ultimate goal is to keep communities safe, and good people don't have to be victimized by crime. And I look at it as an art, but I don't really need people to kind of tell me thank you or write letters or not. I don't need that personally, because I'm going to do it. But I do care about a group of people here that I'm now responsible for. It's at the West Palm Beach Police Department. This is a group of people for the last 15 years have been the most, had the less pay than any other law enforcement agency in Palm Beach County. They were at the bottom when it came to pay salaries and benefits, and they never stopped coming to work, and they continue to give this city 110%, chasing bad guys in the street, putting their lives on the line. And for that particular group to stay committed for as long as they have, and the work that they've done, I do believe that, that they're the ones that needs to hear the thank you. They're the ones that needs to get letters from the community and recognizing their good work. And I would definitely encourage you to do that for the people if you feel that that is necessary, because they're the ones, trust me when I tell you, could have definitely left and went to another agency and got anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a year increase in their salaries. But they chose to stay here in West Palm Beach, and they continue to fight the fight. And as we continue to fight the fight, I just want to recognize the fact that we have a commission and a mayor that said we need to make a change here. And they made us from the bottom of the list to the second highest paid police department in this county. And I definitely want to applaud their efforts in helping us so that we can continue to bring in good people here in our department and continue to provide a top level service to the residents in the city.
Very good. Thank you. Salon, you have a question?
I do, and this question is for both Chief Adderley and Sergeant Banks. How do you work with gangs in the community to help to decrease crime, or what is the relationship in terms of the makeup of decreasing crime or helping to find people who commit crimes?
Well, let me ask you something. And, I think the sergeant may be more aware of this than I am because he's in the field every day. But, when you say gangs, I don't get the impression we have like the traditional gangs here. But what I see that kind of stand out, I think you got like about maybe 8 or 9 drug organizations here where, they've been drugs, open drug sales, which has been a high market value for those individuals for many years. They've been making millions of dollars selling drugs in the streets of West Palm Beach. Okay. And so you got one drug dealer, and he's a pretty decent sized individual, and he operates in a certain area, and he has someone that sells drugs for him. And then that person decides, oh, well, I'm not going to sell for this person anymore. I'm going to move over to another area in the city, and I'm going to work for another drug dealer, and I'm going to sell for that person. Well, it's one thing to move from that, and it just seems like that person can do something like that. When you talk about traditional gangs, and I use Watts as an example because you got the Crips and the Bloods. There's no way a Blood can wake up one day and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to go over and join the Crips. Because as soon as he walks over to the Crips, they're going to kill him. So, I'm not saying it. I think this is more of a, drug organizations. People are organized here in this city, and they got groups of people that selling drugs. When you look at this violent crime here and the shootings and the murders that you've seen over the years, they're all drug related, drug related in some type of fashion. Look at the people that are dying. Look at the people that are actually responsible for these deaths. I mean, there's and then you got these group of people that go around and rob drug dealers here in the city. They know the drug dealers have money. They know they're sitting on large amounts of drugs. So they go in and rob them. Next thing you know, we got another homicide. We got another shooting. So, how do we interact with these drug dealers and criminals? There's only one thing to do with them. We need to arrest them and take them off the streets of West Palm Beach.
Thank you. Frank, let's continue as the chief. When you're going out recruiting, how do you actively recruit minorities, and do you look for people who come from this area to join the force?
Both of those. I think every police chief in the United States is trying to have a diversified police department, and recruiting minorities and retaining them it's a very valuable tool if you have a good strategy in place. I don't really like to publicly talk about our strategy because I don't want my counterparts and these other police departments to take my secret and start taking people away from me. You know what I'm saying? Or us
Okay.
here in Palm Beach. But I think if you look at what we've done in the last 2.5 years and the number of people that have been hired and promoted within our agency, I think we're all on the right track. I think the good thing about it is, and I believe all of my fellow police chiefs that sit in my position is, you got to make sure that you're bringing in some qualified people. Okay, and bringing in qualified people, I don't really think that is really is a challenge. But when you look at why there were a small number of minorities in these jobs, it wasn't the fact that they weren't qualified. They were just discriminated against. And they had racist practices that just didn't hire minorities. And that's why those numbers were low. You make it equal, and the table is balanced, and you give qualified minorities an opportunity to participate in a hiring process, then you can have a diversified police department.
Sergeant Banks, I want to come back to you. You are native to Palm Beach County, and Chief, you're from Fort Lauderdale, so both of you are homegrown. Sergeant Banks, talk to us a little bit how you found the interest and the desire to become a police officer.
Okay. Started back the journey, when I say the journey, I mean the application and the recruitment started back in 2002 for me. And I graduated Auburn University. I'm like, no in the world I'm putting on a uniform and becoming a cop. No, I want to wear Stacey Adams shoes and a nice shirt and tie or something of that nature. There was a officer at the time. His name was Carl Cooper. And I was playing semi-pro football with the South Florida Bandits. And he was employed with the City of West Palm Beach Police Department. And he was like, hey, Banks, we're hiring. You thought about becoming a cop? And I'm like, no way. At the time, I was a substance abuse counselor at South Bay Correctional Facility, wearing my Stacey Adams shoes and my administrative schedule. Pretty much 9 to 5 and off on the weekends. No way do I want to become a cop at this point in my life. In 2003, we visited, when I say we, I'm sorry, the South Florida Bandits. We played the New York Police Department and Fire Department in football in New York City. And just the reception from New York, the New York City Police Department, from the time they picked us up from the airport, checked us into the hotel, and me personally seeing cops in a totally different light. Keep in mind, I was 23, 24 at the time. So there was a lot of immaturity in my way of thinking, especially with my past interaction with law enforcement. And at that point in time, of course, 9/11, a couple years prior, and before the game, they had a ceremony honoring the 37 victims of the Port Authority from 9/11. And just to overwhelm my emotions, I was completely overwhelmed just to see the family, the friends, these small kids who parents paid the ultimate sacrifice. So we can sit here, 20 plus years later on Zoom and have the different things that we have afforded to us. And once we got back, I spoke to Coach Cooper, Carl Cooper at the time, and I said, hey, bring me that application. And he drove from West Palm out to Pahokee and dropped off a 16-page application packet. And I sat at my dining room table while my son did his homework, and I made sure I filled it out that particular day as much as I could, because of course there was other information that I needed to gather. But and here I am now, 18 years come January, and I love it. It's the greatest decision personally, career-wise, or professional I've ever made.
Have you seen and do you see young men and women right now who are graduating from high school or looking at opportunities or in college and maybe go through Palm Beach State College that may need to hear your story to engage with them?
Oh, yes, and I serve as a recruiter for the City of West Palm Beach Police Department. And, you know, like the chief said, I don't want to give out too many secrets, but just know, you know, first thing I ask someone, you know, why do you want to become a cop? And if they tell me, oh, the salary is good, you know, I like working 4 days on, 4 days off, you know, the benefits, the retirement, then I educate them on the real reasons of why should you become a cop. And just to sum it up, if you're not trying to be of service or help someone, forget about it. You're never going to get rich in this profession. So maybe that's not a profession for you.
Frank, when you talked a little bit about discrimination and how it has played a role in so many different areas, does discrimination really affect our community relations with officers? Do you see that in any form or fashion?
Well, I mean, I can't tell you any particular case that stands out to support that. However, I think as an agency, we need to be cognizant about it. And we need to make sure that if there's any thought that could possibly, we need to address it immediately. I mean, I think is a very, very sensitive issue. I think that if it's not one that you address immediately and take appropriate action, that it can spin it completely out of control.
Well, I have a follow-up question to this. And again, I'm going to stay in the neighborhood community, the Northwest Coleman Park area, which is one of our highest crime areas in the city. Do white officers have a hard time doing their job inside those areas with the community? Or do you see any difference between the community reacting with an officer of color as compared to white officer in those high crime areas?
Well, I haven't seen that. I mean, mind you, I've only been here for 2.5 years, and obviously Sergeant Banks been here 18 years, so he could probably speak more to that than I can specifically about in the city of West Palm Beach. But I can tell you right now, I worked with some white officers in the city of Fort Lauderdale in some neighborhoods very similar to the neighborhood, these high crime neighborhoods here in our city. And I mean, they had an excellent relationship with members of the Black community. And I mean, they had a relationship with them. I mean, it was, you know, community policing at its best. I personally worked with some of those officers that definitely stood out. I do believe, though, I mean, you know, if you're talking to some racist person and they say, you know, I really don't like Black people. So you got a racist white person. He said, I really don't like Black people. And he say, why would he pick the Black neighborhood to work? He's gonna patrol the streets, put his life on the line to keep this neighborhood safe for a group of people that they don't even like. Now, if you got this white officer that says, I refuse to work in the Black neighborhood, I'm only going to be in the white neighborhood, and I don't want to deal with Black people, I mean, that's a whole different deal. But, you know, I never seen that before. I've never had a conversation with a white officer in 41 years that actually told me that, you know, but you got, you know, white officers that, you know, they're putting their life on the line, chasing, you know, bad people that are destroying the lives of good people in a Black neighborhood. And then the next thing you know, they're being criticized or as being racist. And then when you look back at what the claims are, it's not even close.
Good. Sergeant Banks, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just maybe I'm going back now 7 years ago. Myself and several other officers within the West Palm Beach Police Department actually went to the Youth Empowerment Center up on 21st Street. And we had an open forum and we were communicating. And keep in mind, we had maybe 10 officers, all different race, gender. And I posed a question to the youth. For as the officers that's presented in front of you, who would you come to if you had an issue right now and why? And there was Black officers, white female officers, white male officers, Hispanic officers. And here I am thinking I'm pretty cool. You know, no one chose me. They chose each officer for different individual reasons. They chose a female officer because she looked nice. They chose a male white officer because they liked the color of his hair. He had blonde hair. It was different reasons why would they approach a group of officers and decide to have a conversation with them. Now, I've been working within the city of West Palm Beach, pretty much all different type of geographical areas of the city. And as far as the Coleman Park area, I know white officers. If me and another white officer was standing up near 21st and Tamarind, they would come to certain officers, white officers, because of their past interactions with them, probably before they even come speak to me. We do have white officers that really engage our community, the African-American community in that particular area, and they do an outstanding job of doing so.
Mhm. Very good. I'm going to go back to community policing, Frank and Chief and Sergeant Banks, and a series of questions. What are the goals of community policing?
Well, I can answer that. You know, community policing, I think, first of all, address what the concerns are in the community. You have community support that, you know, part of their component, they're actually working to create a safer neighborhood. And when you actually look at it, you got a group of people who take ownership in their neighborhood and they're involved in community policing. They're going to be more effective than, say, the police. What I mean by that is, you know, the police get to come to the neighborhood and they do their business and address whatever the concerns are. You know, they may make arrests, they may not make arrests, they may, you know, handle delayed report, may do a number of things, but they're not going to be there forever. They're not going to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the community will always be there. And that's going to be the backbone of the community and the strength of the community. When you see a strong community that all come together and they're all stakeholders and they say, we're not going to allow certain things to happen in our neighborhood. And it's very difficult for criminal activity to take place in strong communities. But when you have half of the communities that's involved in criminal activity, and then the other half that have basically said, it's okay, and we're going to allow that to happen, and we're not going to do anything about it, you know, that's basically a weak community that don't have any engagement with the police, and their efforts of being part of a community policing strategy is going to be a lot less and ineffective because of their lack of engagement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But staying on that point, Frank, what type of skills do the police officers and community residents and leaders need to make community policing work? I mean, what can we help, or what can we offer to our residents to say, here's what we need to make community policing work better from the community? You're on mute, Frank.
Can you hear me now?
You go. Yes, can hear you now.
I don't know how that happened, but anyway, so I do believe that you know, the formula for success when it comes to that is just simple, open communications. You know, why is it that you feel crime is occurring in your neighborhood? And they have a list of reasons as to why. What evidence do you have? You give that to the police, and then the police can come and help you solve it. So, you know, having an open dialogue, I believe, is probably the most effective community policing strategy. You know, you got to have open dialogue. You got to have people that are committed to making a change in the neighborhoods so that they can all work with the police and they can have some positive results. And I do believe, Patrick, that once you have people that say, oh, it didn't ever work here, and once they start seeing that the police are serious, that the police going to stand by their word, that they're trustworthy, that they're open and they're transparent, then they're going to build trusting relationships with individuals that are going to be willing to work with them, and they're going to be effective in making a positive change.
Sergeant Banks, from your time of being on the ground, boots on the ground, have you seen some pockets of good community policing as far as working with the community residents and the police in action?
Oh, yes, yes. Like I said, from day one, every officer should be a part of community policing. I mean, that's exactly what we're there to do, to service the community. You don't have to label it as a specialized unit where you have 5 group of individuals that's specifically assigned to one area of the city and say, okay, go and address these issues. No, why limit to 5 when you have close to 300 sworn? If we all taught and trained and starting as a training officer to teach a day one Ricky officer that these are the people of the community, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whoever, and we're here to service them. Go into their business. Say, hey, how you doing? You got any issues or any complaints, anything you need to know about? Introduce yourself. Not I'm Sergeant Banks. Hey, my name is Jeremy. I'm an officer with the West Palm Beach Police Department. You know, I'm working this area. You see someone coming in the store, just small little polite things like holding the door and speak, offer someone pay a comment to someone. Or your dress look nice. I like those shoes. Or young fella, hey man, where did you get those Jordans? Engage a young kid in Jordan. You'll see they would definitely speak to you all day then. I don't care if you have on a police uniform or a Marine Corps uniform. They would definitely engage you in communication. But we, as professionals, we need to patiently take our time and not take things as personal or as sensitive. Not saying that we are, but if someone chooses not to speak to us at that particular point in time, then hey, we'll move on. And I'll see you again the next day. I'm going to be polite and respectful until you pretty much break you down.
Very good. Frank, how do you, as a leader of your department, how do you measure success in community policing, in your engagement with the community? How do you measure that level of success?
Well, you have to look at the complaints. You know, you got unhappy people who say the police are totally ineffective and they're not doing a good job. And you listen to what they have to say. Okay. If you have a large number of people that say that, then that means you got a problem. And if you got issues that they're bringing to your attention and you don't address them, it just makes them worse. But if someone that comes to you and they got a problem and you can fix it for them and you chose not to, then that's bad on the police. And as a leader in this profession, you got to be focused on maintaining a high level of customer service. And my thing here is when somebody come to me and they have a conversation with me and they say, hey, this is what the problem is. If they walk away from me thinking that I don't care, I'm not going to do anything to help them, this thing is not going to be resolved, everything is going to fall on deaf ears, and they don't see a result, if they actually feel that way just by talking to me, then I have basically failed. And, that's not a community policing strategy. That's just a strategy that's just setting up to fail, and you're not going to be successful in accomplishing that goal. So you look at your results as to how does the public rate your success? If they say, we feel that the police have responded and they did their job to the best of their ability. And sometimes you can't, you're not going to get the results that they want, but you took the time to explain to them why it didn't happen the way you think it should. I do believe people walk away and say, the police did their job and they're happy with their response. And I measure the success on how many times that we get a positive response from the community compared to the ones that said we dropped the ball and didn't do our job.
Chief Federley, that was a great response. And appropriately enough, we have a question from Steve West for you, specifically the chief. And the question is, with the active dealers widely known, with the current RICO and red flag laws to help, what are the barriers to removing the 10 to 20 dealers away sooner than later?
Stay tuned. We're bringing every federal resource that we possibly can to this city. We're targeting these individuals. We're actively investigating them. And I say to who's the person that asked that question?
Steve West.
Steve West.
Steve West from the in-crowd. We know each other.
Stay tuned, Steve West. I think you're going to see what I'm talking about. We're not ignoring these people. We're coming after them, brother. We're going to bring every resource that we possibly can. We got a great relationship with the FBI, DEA, Customs, the Secret Service, U.S. Marshals, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm. We got a relationship with the United States Attorney's Office, the state attorney's office here in Palm Beach County. Our sheriff, Rick Bradshaw, is definitely with us, supporting us 110%. And we're coming, man. And I'm telling you right now, if you think that we go to bed at night thinking that we're not going after these people, we're going to do everything we possibly can to bring justice in this city. And our job is to take these people off our streets and make our streets safe.
Absolutely. If you'll be available when I call you tomorrow, we could talk off the air about this. But there's one other thing that I'd like to bring up that you've brought up already, and that is there are citizens that we know that are interested in doing the things that you want the citizens of the community to do, that everlasting presence. And so if that's okay, I'd like to talk to you about that too, and maybe hook you up with a person or two that would like to talk about that.
We'll love to be a part of that discussion.
Got it.
Thank you both. Patrick, we have another question from the chat, which goes back to, how as a community we can help. The question is, what can we do to highlight the work of police officers who are doing their jobs effectively and to counteract the negative stigma around police?
I kind of think I answered that before, but, I think acknowledging them and as Sergeant Banks saying the words of thank you, or, we get a lot of people from the public that write letters thanking the officers and our investigators, and, even our civilian employees on the work that they do here. We got a lot of people that are non-sworn, but, they're behind the scenes, and they're very a big supporter of what our finished product ends up being here on a daily basis, and it's those individuals that continue to help us along with the sworn people. If you write letters and commending them, I think that those letters of thank you go a long way.
Good.
Thank you.
Sergeant Banks, have you seen a decrease or increase during the pandemic when it comes to noticeable, when it comes to crime?
Now, I can't speak of all crime because I don't have the numbers readily available for me. And my specialty, or my unit, is violent crimes. We do have property crimes, which is, of course, totally different than the violent crime aspect. But during the pandemic, no, last year, like I said, it's really kind of hard to answer without having exact numbers, and I hate to give you something that's totally.
Well, I mean,
Totally off.
did you see a slight decrease, or was it about the same from your perspective?
Overall, since 2019, I definitely have seen a decrease in violent crimes and crimes within our city. And it starts from up top with our command staff and right down to the officers on the street. And of course, the end of 2009, the pandemic pretty much started hitting the states in the early first quarter, and I'm going to go from January to maybe March, April here in this nation. But overall, I definitely have seen a reduction in crime, in different type of crimes, violent crimes that my unit investigates.
Okay. Chief, overall, from your perspective, has the pandemic, have you seen an increase or a decrease as far as crime and community policing effectiveness?
Well, let me just start with the pandemic, and I think Sergeant Banks kind of hit on this. I mean, we didn't normally fall within some of the national trends that we saw initially. I remember I was in a workshop with U.S. Congresswoman Lois Franco, and she asked me about the increase of domestic violence, and this was like right after the pandemic, maybe about 4 or 5 months into it. And I really didn't know about that trend. And then when we looked at our numbers and West Palm, it nothing stood out. We couldn't identify that trend here in West Palm. And then all of a sudden, about a year or so later, all of a sudden we noticed this increase. You know, what was happening nationwide all of a sudden was something that we saw here in our city. I think that when you look at some of the other things that are definitely a big concern for us, mainly shootings and the violent crime here. I mean, I think I don't really see COVID actually changing any of that in any way, which, you know, I know some of the other cities have seen some certain patterns. I just never really saw.
We lost you.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Yeah, we lost you for a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so every time I guess someone tries to call me or text me, it's sort of like knocking me out.
Okay.
I have a question, Patrick.
Yeah, go ahead, Flora.
With the advancement of technology, and this is a question for both of you, do you feel like you have all the tools that you need to decrease crime? Or are there other advancements that would be able to help you in communities to know about a crime that's happening, whether it's gun violence? Is there some other technology that you feel like you really need that could help decrease crime across the board?
You know what? Let me just say this. I think technology continues to grow, and it's definitely an effective tool for us. And it can constantly change some of our strategies and how we actually conduct our job. And I think it's going to get more and more. And do we have sufficient stuff? I think that we do a pretty decent job. We have a Lieutenant Hagan here, and Cliff Hagan, as far as I'm concerned, he's a guy that's definitely stands out in the business, and he's our guy that handles that stuff for us, and he's looking at all of the new things that are out there and making sure that we try to bring those things here in West Palm. I do believe that we're kind of fortunate. We have 5 elected officials and a mayor support us every time we go before the commission and asking to get funding pay for those type of techniques that's going to help us enhance our level of enforcement. So that support definitely means a lot and has helped us.
Over the last 5 to 6 years, we've seen some really big cases around the country happen with George Floyd and Ferguson, Missouri, and New York City, and you name it, all of Louisville. It just goes on and on and on. What can we do as a community and working with our police departments to start prevention when we look at issues that may arise from an incident? How do we, what should we be doing on a constant basis in order that we have a better understanding of each other when we will have to confront something like this?
Well, listen, I go back to open communications. We got to be able to communicate effectively with the people. You look at George Floyd and people say, well, what is it that you've done different since George Floyd? Well, if you had to wait for the George Floyd case to know that you need to have policies in place to prevent the George Floyd incident from occurring, I believe you. I just believe that you're completely lost. You know what I mean? I believe that when you look at his department there were measures in place to prevent that from happening. That's why they fired him from the police department. That's why the laws were able to successfully prosecute this officer who committed murder. You know what I mean? So, does George Floyd, change the way we do policing? Not for me, because, we have measures in place to prevent those things from occurring. Okay. When they occur like that, then that means someone have violated a policy, violated a law, and that we have our job is to make sure that they're held accountable for their actions.
Mm-hmm. I have a question in the chat, Chief. It says basically, although rare, to what extent is police corruption, partnering in crime, in representing communities being mitigated in the West Palm Beach Police Department?
Police corruption?
Yes.
Well,
in partnering in the crime that they actually are working in.
Well, let me ask you something. If the question is how we're addressing police corruption here in West Palm Beach,
how are you mitigating that? How are you training or working so that won't happen within your department?
Well, first of all, let me just say this. You can have laws, policies, management, supervision, and things kind of slip through the cracks. You need to hold people accountable for their actions. We had a couple officers since I've been here that engaged in some criminal activity. Yeah, we arrested them, we prosecuted them, and we've terminated their employment here. Okay, zero tolerance is the measure that we need to have, and we need to make sure that people adhere to the fact that we're going to not allow those type of behaviors to happen. So, if you treat one person different than the other, you let this person get away with it, but you're not going to discipline the other person, then that's when you have the problems, I believe. Mm-hmm. But if you hold everyone accountable and you stick to that, I think the people get the word, and they're going to realize that it is zero tolerance, and you're not going to allow that behavior to happen.
Very good. Have another question. Lana, you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much. I just want to say this has been very informative, and thank you so much for your time. I especially like the comment that you made. I didn't even realize you police differently depending on the community that you serve in terms of the Tamarind area versus the gated community. But I did have a question, and I just wanted to know your overall perspective on the topic of defunding the police. And I think one of the arguments some of these individuals have made is that they said that police officers deal with too many social issues that they are not trained to do. How do you feel about that?
Well, let me just say this. People that say we should defund the police are not working, do not live in high crime neighborhoods. Okay?
Frank, we lost you. Frank,
Frank, you're muted again.
you're muted again.
Want to live in a safe neighborhood, just like these other people, right? Now you say the social services, and they're going to come out and they're going to do. That's great. I think it's a great idea. Okay, and I was told that you got groups of social services that are going to come out and they're going to take the place of law enforcement, and they're going to handle all of these calls. I like to know who those people are. When I was in Fort Lauderdale, I heard a presentation by some police officers from Australia, and one of the most effective things that they did was they created a squad that responded to calls for people that fit a certain profile, whether it was someone that had any indication that the person was having some type of social dysfunction.
Frank, I think we lost you for a second. Sergeant Banks, when it comes to defunding the police, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, now, please help me out because I really don't watch the news. I never watch the news or listen to anything like that. Once again, all the foolishness come my way is from social media. When you say defund the police, that mean you want to live in a society without law enforcement, or what?
Well, it comes in different capacities. One would be defund the police and fund a different type of policing unit or whatever. It's all over the place, but it's basically in reaction to what can we do different as far as the funding that's being allocated right now. Where can we allocate it more into specific areas such as mental illness and other things that you all are dealing with? But that's just one avenue. And I think what Frank was saying is that if you live in a high crime area, you're not saying defund the police. You're saying help us better, help us more in that area. So, any thoughts from that on that platform?
Yeah, I just wanted to know your perspective on it.
No, it's my first time ever giving it any thought, because when I hear you say defund something, that to me that's like taking away its resources, taking away the previous question that Chief Adderley just responded to about technology and different things like that make our job somewhat easier and make your neighborhood safer. So if you want to defund the police, that's counterproductive, in my opinion. I've heard of someone rumored about maybe having a civilian people that, civilians that go out and respond to calls for services. But I think in our training, we saw a Dateline video where, an individual was just kind of mouthing off to a civilian, and they had a gun, they had a taser, they had all the tools that we use, and the first thing they resorted to was their firearm, and actually shot the person just for aggressively approaching. So no, I think we need to, in my opinion, I think we need to add more funds towards law enforcement to keep everyone safe. And I'm not talking about padding our pockets. I'm talking about funds for mental illness, like you stated, and things that we can use to better service our community and make sure the people who are out terrorizing, the hoodlums that's out terrorizing our communities are locked away and stay away for a very long time.
Frank,
Okay,
are
thank
you
you.
back with us? Frank? All right, we're gonna try to get him back online with us. Sergeant Banks, when in your daily activities, as you do your work and your team, even though you're in a very specialized unit, if you look at the normal patrol officer who's just walking a beat or doing community policing, how much activity are they engaging with citizens and residents that have mental issues going on that really are not criminal issues, but you have to deal with them?
Well, one thing, every officer that come through the West Palm Beach Police Department, and even now it's definitely mandated now more so because you just ride up and down 45th Street. I mean, we have what, 4 mental health mental health facilities right here in our city alone. So mental illness is really it's really a serious issue. But every officer that comes through our agency is required to go through a 40-hour training of crisis intervention training that deals with mental illnesses and our response and our approach and the way we communicate and different things like that. So we're actually, as a department, or even as the county, and I know the sheriff department is really big on the crisis intervention training for officers as well. So
how do you decipher sometimes between a mental illness issue or a case as you approach it, as compared to something that is criminal? I mean, how do you make that decision that this is a mental illness case that I need to address in a different way when you approach a situation, especially in a high crime area?
Just being attentive ear. I mean, when a person is talking, there's all kind of red flags that can show a person is in distress mentally. And I'm not talking about any substance or alcohol, although, you know, substance abuse can be misinterpreted for some type of mental crisis. But if the person is talking and just ranting and going on, and based on some of the trainings that we have had, you can definitely determine that a person is in crisis and they do need assistance for their mental illness, not being locked away on some trespassing charge because, you know, they really can't decipher the two at that particular time.
Very good, very good.
Patrick, we have another question in the chat.
Go ahead.
The question is, for individuals who've recently been incarcerated for federal crimes, in what ways has the Palm Beach Police Department made efforts to ensure that these individuals don't end up locked up again?
Oh man, I wish Chief Adler was on there. He can answer that.
Okay.
Okay. Chief, are you back with us? There he is. Chief?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Good.
Can you
The
hear me?
question was for individuals who've been recently incarcerated for federal crimes, in what ways has the West Palm Beach Police Department made efforts to ensure that these individuals are not repeat offenders?
Well, I mean, that's not really up to us. I mean, you know, we got a justice system that kind of deal with those individuals. And you know, for us, I mean, we're going to enforce the law, and we're going to hold people accountable for their actions. So repeat offender comes out and they continue to commit crimes, we're going to continue to arrest them, and hopefully we get a judge that say, you know, this person meet a certain level of points in the system, and they're going to sentence them to an appropriate sentence. Sometimes, you know, a lot of things they say, well, you know, if you notice, everyone seems to think that, the police are responsible for all of these different things. But, whether the person is off the streets and serving a significant sentence isn't one that we actually in control of.
Mhm. Chief, when you look at the differences, and again, I'm trying to compare the community policing or the policing effort between our high crime areas and our so-called gated communities. In our high crime areas, we see 5-6 cars at a scene or something like that. I mean, multiple cars come in at a time when something's right happening, and maybe in the gated community, we may see one car without their lights on at all. What type of, talk to us about the effect that a resident may have when you see when you constantly see a barrage of officers at a scene as compared to another community where you barely even hear or see them.
Patrick, the difference is high crime in a certain area, no crime in another area. You got issues that people that live in those neighborhoods want to see law enforcement. I find it kind of interesting that the people that live in the neighborhood that wants to have a safe neighborhood, they never complain about this. But people that live in gated communities that don't live in these high crime neighborhoods, that's all they complain about. How come you have so many officers over here? How come you make so many arrests? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, when you are a Black victim in a Black neighborhood that are being victimized, they want to see the police there because they're sick and tired of being victimized.
Understandable.
And Patrick, if I could,
Sergeant Banks?
yes, and this morning I worked an off-duty detail within a gated community from 5 a.m. to 8 before my shift. And can anyone guess my sole reason for being there within a gated community? Anyone?
Presence.
Speeding and failure to come to a complete stop at a four-way stop sign.
From 5 a.m. to 8 a.m.?
5 a.m. to 8 a.m. Keep in mind, the kids start going to the school bus, people leaving out for work, those issues like that. In my 18 years of law enforcement, I have yet, to my knowledge, been made aware of a speeding complaint along the Tamarind corridor. Or someone failing to come to a stop sign at 20th and Tamarind, which we all know, and your office is right there. I had the pleasure of coming to your office. They run that stop sign, a rolling stop, all the time.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Just a reminder, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. We are looking for more questions, but please type your question in the chat so we can get to all those who are seeking some responses to their questions. Salon, do you have another one?
Yes. What can be attributed to the fact that many people, particularly Black people, have been killed by police, especially in recent years?
Wait a minute. Your question is, what is the contributing factor for what?
What can be attributed to the fact that many people, many Black people have been killed by police, especially in recent years? Is it, because of George Floyd, the movement? Is there a higher percentage that Black people are being murdered by police as opposed to white? There's something particular or more contributing factors?
Or are we just seeing it more now, Frank, because of social media?
Well, I think that, anytime a white officer shoots and kills a Black person, you can rest assured, everyone in the world is going to hear about that story. That is like the hot topic story. And, I was on a panel, and I think it might have been with the Urban League, and we're talking about this. The last time a white officer shot and killed a Black man in West Palm Beach was in January, sometime in 2015. And, you know, everything was on videotape. It was a black suspect that went into a convenience store. He shot the store clerk, and it's my understanding he killed another person, and he was running away from the store. And here you have a white police officer serving and protecting a black neighborhood, putting his life on the line to make black residents in this city safe. And he chased this man who just shot 2 people. And the next thing he knew, this individual was shooting at him, and he shot and he killed him. Everything was justified. Everyone saw the videotape. But what happened after this? 135 unsolved homicides where a young black male shot and killed another young black male. When are we going to be, let's start putting this on social media. We got a serious problem here in this city, and when are we going to all work together to solve it? You know, you can always talk about how the white officers are mistreating the black people here in the town. I would really like to see where those complaints are, because I haven't seen them. I don't see the volume of this mistreatment here in this town. And but I do see shootings and a lot of young black victims that are being victimized by other young black aggressors. And this is a big problem. When are we going to start emphasizing that this is a problem here, and we're going to all work together to solve it? I'm waiting for everybody to get excited about it. When we're going to start doing it? I mean, we had not too long ago, we had a 17-year-old that murdered a 16-year-old. Everybody knew who shot him. Took us 4 months to make an arrest on the case. No one even complained about it.
May I say something?
Yes.
This is something that the INCRAD is working on. And one of the things that we see, Frank, is that it's in the psyche of everybody who's watching on television and reading the newspapers and listening to these reports that are happening in Atlanta and Minneapolis. One of the things that people in this community have to realize is that we have really committed, good police forces and the heads of the chiefs of good police forces in Palm Beach County. And we're trying to make that distinction in the community. And I believe we'll be successful because it's the truth. So people need that information, and I think it will make a difference. What do you think?
Yeah, I think people need to get educated on, you know, what the real number is. You know, what is really has driven the media ain't really the problems in the streets in this city.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Frank, you touched on my next subject, and you really talked about it really nice as far as black on black crime, and how can we as concerned people here, and we all are concerned citizens and residents, etc. What can we do to foster a better relationship, to foster better input from our community to help solve some of these crimes, to stop some of this black on black crime? That's absolutely, and I agree with you, the #1 killer of our young men today.
Yeah, so here what you have here is, just like we're having a meeting tonight and we're talking about community issues, just how we have meetings at our station and we talk about our crime reduction strategy, and we meet with our partners, you know, the federal resources and people that are working with us to make our city safe. You have a criminal element. They meet, they have discussion, and they strategize. And they are definitely winning over when it comes to the media, because now they're convincing people, oh, well, we got a problem over here, over in Tamarind, where white officers are mistreating the public. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you how, they can't tell you who the officers are, they can't tell you who the victims are, but we got a problem. And that stuff just continues to get traction and traction and traction. And those meetings that these criminals are having, and they're trying to control, they're controlling this narrative pretty well because, you know, there's a lot of people talking about it. Okay. It's an organized crime group of people here, and they're controlling the narratives, and they're the ones that trying to make this to be the big problem so that people would not look at what the real problem is, because it involved them and their criminal enterprise, and they're more violent, and they're the ones that's causing this disruption in our city. And we, as the people that want to see it safe, we need to come together and we need to put a stop to it.
Very well said. Sergeant Banks, anything to add to that?
Not at all.
I hear you loud and clear. I like to recognize one of our longtime partners with the Urban League, retired Lieutenant Beverly Morrison from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department. Beverly, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Good. Would you like to say a few words?
No, not really. The only thing that I can think of is, you know, in talking about crime and solving of crime, I think it has a lot to do with home and parents. Our parents are becoming the friends of their kids and not parenting the way that they should. I think a lot of these parents are aware of what their children are doing, and that has to stop. Mm-hmm. Parents need to be parents. Parents need to turn their kids in if they're doing something wrong. It's just the way of the world right now, but that's what I think needs to happen. I think it starts at home.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we see that all too often. Frank, as we're nearing the end now with our process here, our communities have suffered in so many ways, and if you reside in or around the Northwest community, Tamron, Coleman Park, all through those areas, and the only reason I keep talking about those areas because that's the areas that I sit in every day. That's the areas that I go up and down the streets every day. So my observations are the same as you all. What can we do? I've always wanted to see what can we do to engage the young people that are wasting their time each and every day on the corners of the neighborhoods, that have too much time in their hands to get involved with opportunities of crime. What can we do? What have you all have seen? We tried several issues with the Urban League, with our clean team, et cetera, to get young men off the street, to get to employ them, et cetera. What do you think are the steps that we as an agency, as the Urban League, we as a community, what can we do to try to help this situation? Because it just annoys me.
Well, I think, Patrick, I'm sure you've had the same conversations with them that I have. You're talking about a group of people that lack education from dysfunctional families. You know, they're out there and, you know, they're looking for an opportunity to make some money, fast money. Unfortunately, when you talk to them, you know, the parents been to prison, their uncle in prison, and, you know, their big brother probably went to prison, and in their world, they probably think it's just a matter of time that they're going to go to prison. When you speak to them, they lack an education. I'm going to tell you right now, you say what would be probably the most effective crime reduction strategy is to educate our youth. Mm-hmm. Because the ones that I normally come in contact with, they're not very bright. You know, they lack social skills, education skills, some very basic things. And it's very hard for a person that can't read to understand what the consequences are in life. They don't understand, you're going to go to jail and, 10, 20 years from now, you may not be able to get a good job when you really want to be, a family man and have a family and just have a regular job. No one's going to give you a job. Opportunities are going to disappear. They don't understand the consequence. They don't understand the consequences to how this thing is going to affect them for the rest of their life. What the important things of education and how valuable it is. I mean, education is probably the most valuable thing you can have, because knowledge is gold, man. And, to talk to people that lack that, don't really understand, that's a very difficult conversation when you say to them, how do I help you change your life? How do I get you off these streets? How do I take you out of the drug game and bring you back to a legitimate place where you just have a regular job and living a normal life? And it's places like the Urban League and the programs that you guys have, I applaud your efforts, but it's unfortunate. There's a group of people out there, you're never going to be able to reach them if you go with them just saying, I need to have a simple conversation and I'm going to talk this person into turning their life around.
Chief Adderley, speaking on the same subject regarding educating youth, do we still have a DARE program that can educate kids?
Well, you need to ask the school board that. They take over the schools and they're the ones that teach those programs.
Okay.
I don't know.
Are they any other programs outside of PAL that are working with kids in the community or engaging? I know you might have the Young Explorers or something like that. Or is that the Sheriff's Department?
Well, I'm not sure I can't speak for the Sheriff's Department, but we're going to be starting our program back. I mean, obviously pandemic kind of made some changes here for us, and we kind of put those programs on hold, but we'll be starting them back.
Chief, what's the criteria for an individual that wants to become a police officer? Age and education, etc.
High school diploma gets you in. Got to be 21 years old. You got to be of good moral character. And if you're a certified police officer with the state of Florida, we're accepting your applications right now.
Very good, very good. And how does a young person, male or female, really get to the point of saying they just go to City of West Palm Beach Police Department website?
Yeah, you go
on
information. Sources website, and the application process is there. It explains the whole process to you.
If I could add to that, the website is www.wpb.org, and you can see the drop box as far as jobs, and it's the City of West Palm Beach website, not the police department, but the City of West Palm Beach website.
City of West Palm Beach. Okay, thank you, Sergeant. I want to bring on one person right now who's been an avid supporter of the Urban League for many years, and has really been there for all of our Zoom events, no matter what they are. Malachi Knowles, you have a special presentation on Saturday evening. Would you like to say a word about that?
Yes, we have our ICYG Community Giants event. Thank you, Patrick, and Solon. Excellent program. You have two Omegas on too, and of course Jeremy Banks and Frank Adley. No pun intended. However, Franklin will be receiving our inaugural ICYG Community Policing Award, and well deserved at his work in the community. And you can see he's bringing along good people like Jeremy T. Banks. Congratulations, Frank, and great program, Urban League.
Thank you very much. To our young people, look, you have a role to play in our society. You have a responsibility, no matter if you realize that or not. And we want to make sure that you understand what your role is and make sure that you live up to the expectations that so many of us are hoping that you will get to that point. So stay engaged and make sure that if you see something, say something, okay? Don't just sit back and think that somebody else is going to do something for you. If there's some activity that needs to be reported, find the right avenues to report your criminal activity or whatever. You have two fine gentlemen that have joined us this evening to engage with us, to share their knowledge, to share their wisdom, their expertise. I want to thank Sergeant Jeremy Banks for the time you've given us. It's been outstanding. We hope that our youth will see you in action as you walk your beat, as you drive the community, etc. And students, look, if you see Sergeant Banks, hey, give him a high five, give him a hands-on, whatever. We're here to support each other. And that's what we need. We need better dialogue. We talked about communication quite a bit tonight. It's all about communication, the proper communication, and all those things that are needed to make our community better. When it comes to policing, you have an expert in Frank Adderley, our chief of police for the city of West Palm Beach. Frank has done a tremendous job over the last 2.5 years to help us move forward. And if you have not seen Frank in and around the neighborhoods, then you don't have your eyes open, okay? Because he's been there walking around early in the mornings. He's been there in so many different ways. He's been at all of our Urban League activities, and you will constantly see him engaged. And I want to thank Frank for his absolute leadership with this department, the changes that he's made, the drive that he has to drive down crime in our neighborhood. And I'm looking forward to the day that we can create more jobs and opportunities for our young men and women of color, especially those who come from this area, that they can come and join the police force, because it is a valued effort that we need to do. I want to thank the State Attorney General's office, State Attorney General Ashley Mooney, for funding for this program. And we've been doing this type of work and funds from the Attorney General's office of the state of Florida for 30+ years. And these are the type of activities that you're going to see from us going forward. And stay tuned, because this is our second one, and we're going to see many more in the future. Going forward, we're going to be talking about human trafficking, school violence, bullying, police responding to schools, and Baker Act in Palm Beach County, racial injustice, arrest, incarceration. We're going to be talking about police diversity and gang violence. All these topics are coming up as we embark upon our community police relations justice circle forums, and you're going to be hearing from us on a monthly basis. Our next program is due up on Wednesday, December 15th, and we're going to be talking about human trafficking. So with that being said, Mr. Evangelista, anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to say thank you to both the chief and sergeant for participating, as well as Ms. Beverly Morrison. She is a staunch advocate of the Urban League, and her presence is always appreciated, former PBSO. To all the young students and young adults that are on this call, I hope you were able to take away a lot of good nuggets. The police force or law enforcement is not only about arrests. Law enforcement exists for many, many, many reasons. Yes, making arrests and keeping property and people safe is paramount, but they are also humans too. And part of this community police relationships type workshops and seminars is to soften that image, to encourage some dialogue, and to start seeing law enforcement in a different light, as well as for law enforcement to hear from the community questions, comments, and concerns that they may have, so that we can start lowering the temperature, lowering the volume of rhetoric, of myths, of miscommunication and misinformation. So to all of the adults and parents that are on this call, hopefully As we continue this programming, we'll build a wider and larger audience so that we can continue to bridge this law enforcement and community gap. I think it is necessary. And like Patrick said, if you see something, kindly say something. The police can't do everything by themselves. They need us to work alongside with them. And I just have to say thank you for your service. It's greatly appreciated, and it's because of your service we can live in the world that we can live in and go to work and feel safe.
With that, thank you very much. Good night and happy holidays to everyone.
Same to you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the evening.
Great job.